Yo guys, what's going on? I'm Tim Kelly. This is the Real Sports Talk and Nation Sports Blog presents the 30 Clubs, 30 Previews MLB special. We are getting down to less than 10 days till the MLB season gets going, so we are going to try and crank out some of these videos this weekend, beginning with the Oakland Athletics season preview, a team that came out of nowhere last year, almost recreated Moneyball, went 94-68, and on the final day of the season, they took down the big bad Rangers, finishing it with a 94-68 record and winning their first AL West title and who knows how long, going to the playoffs for the first time since 2006. And Bob Melvin was one of the best managers in the MLB last year. So Justin, this offseason, the A's made a few minor moves. They acquired Chris Young. Let's go into just some of the other moves that they did make this offseason.
Like you said, they brought in Chris Young from the Arizona Diamondbacks. Because we all know that good relationship between the Diamondbacks and the Athletics. Because you know what, this team might just keep on trading away, back and forth with their players. Steven Drew came over here last season. He's now with the Boston Red Sox. But like you said, Tim, they bring over Chris Young. He's going to be serving as the team's backup center fielder behind Coco Crispo. That's a really solid move for them. When you also go into their pitching rotation, they brought in a couple of minor guys, kind of like Hideki Nakajima, Mike Eckerstorm. Those are the guys that are going to try to make their way into the bullpen or possibly into the rotation sometime this year. So you guys want to look out for them. The team also made a trade this offseason, which involved the Houston Astros. As the Astros are now moving into their division, and now they traded away Chris Carter, who was the team's starting first baseman. He was also coming up as a prospect in their organization. They traded him away to the Houston Astros as they acquired Jed Lowry. He's going to be the team's backup, I think, infielder. He can play. He's a multiple position player, so you cannot go wrong with adding Jed Lowry. He's pretty good. So he's still young up there. Just to add to this Oakland Athletics young team.
Yeah, that does add on to their team. Now, Justin, I think that we would both agree that as good and impressive as this team was last year, they go into that category with the Orioles as teams that you're not exactly sure what to expect in 2013. I mean, there's four teams that I've been saying this entire time. You have the Phillies and Red Sox, two veteran teams that had very down years last year, and you have the A's and the Orioles, two young teams that surprised a lot of people, and they have just been extremely hard teams as we've gone through all this. We're assuming that a lot of these guys are going to produce the way that they did last year, when many of them could end up taking regression. So keep that in mind as we preview this entire team. We will begin at catcher, where John Jaso is going to be the starter. Jaso, coming over from the Seattle Mariners, hit .276 last year with 10 home runs, 50 RBIs. I think that he is a pretty nice piece. He avoided arbitration with the team this offseason, signs a one-year deal. So John Jaso will be your guy behind the plate.
Now, I am really surprised about this positioning at the catcher's position, because when you look at his backup in Derek Norris, this guy is a monster. Not taking anything away from John Jaso, Derek Norris has had something very special coming up to the levels. He has a solid power swing, and you know what? Last year in 60 games, he did have 7 home runs, 34 RBIs. But he was that guy at the end of the year that really stepped up in clutch situations. And why not give Derek Norris that starting job? But then you got to go over to John Jaso, who has had MLB experience. Last year he will crank you about 10 home runs a year. That's what we saw last year with about 50 RBIs. He batted .276 in 108 games. I think that was actually a split season with Tampa Bay, if I'm mistaken, please correct me. But John Jaso, he's a good catcher. He has great play calling abilities. So you cannot go wrong with starting John Jaso over Derek Norris. But Derek Norris, he should be getting a fair amount of starts with John Jaso as starter.
Yeah, I don't think John Jaso is going to be playing every day of the week. I think you will see Derek Norris get the starts. And long-term, Norris is the guy behind the plate. He's very young, 23 years old. And he's a guy that throughout the minors, again, he never hit for a great average. Justin mentioned the power that he had. He had 23 home runs at the single-A level, 20 at the double-A level, and then last year only played 58 games at the triple-A level and hit 9. But when he came up to the MLB, Justin mentioned the 7 home runs he had. He also hit 201, so that was one of the disappointing things about him. I think to long-term be a successful catcher, he is going to have to hit for a better average. But overall, I like the A's at catcher. Now at DH, Seth Smith is going to be the guy. Last year, came over from the Colorado Rockies in the offseason, and in 125 games, hit 240 with 14 home runs, 52 RBIs. I think Seth Smith is a pretty solid player. Is he one of the better DHs? Probably not. I think his best suited role is to be a fourth outfielder, but overall, I don't feel like they have someone who's holding the team back at DH. So Seth Smith is going to be the guy at DH. Now, Justin mentioned over at first base with Chris Carter moving on, they have Brandon Moss will be the everyday first baseman, and Moss last year was very impressive. In only 84 games, Moss hit 291, 21 home runs, and 52 RBIs. That was after a very successful stint at AAA Sacramento, I believe it is. So all of a sudden, a guy who had bounced around the minor leagues after not working out with Boston, not working out with Pittsburgh, was in the Phillies minor league for a season. He really figured it out last year in only 84 games. Now, Justin, he had just an incredible season last year, and that would lead most people to think that he's only going to get better from here. But there is also that thought process that maybe he was just a one-year guy. What do you believe on Brandon Moss coming into this season?
You know, I honestly do not know what to expect from Brandon Moss. We could see, the slump that he's been going on in the early days of the MLB season. But, when you looked at last year with the Sacramento River Cats, which is their AAA affiliate, this guy really impressed me. Even though, he did had a couple, down games, but that didn't, fulfill his whole stint down at the AAA level. But during his time at the Major League level, Brandon Moss really did impress me. This guy came out in 84 games and took over 21 home runs, 52 RBIs, and batted .291. He improved. And you know what? That's what this team really needs. They really need Brandon Moss to really step up at the first baseman role. You do not want to have the Brandon Moss that we saw down in the early parts of his career, with Boston, with Pittsburgh, where he just went on these tremendous slumps. This is a guy who was a highly talented prospect back in 2004, 2005, when he was with the Boston Red Sox. But we just hope for the best for Brandon Moss with the Oakland Athletics. He's not the most greatest, first baseman, really going to shine his glove at first base, but you're going to get solid production out of him. He's going to hit you some home runs. His RBIs, we just hope that his RBI count can go up a little bit more. His average is solid at where it needs to be, batted .291 last year. We just hope that in the 84 games that he had, let's just hope that he can extend it to 162 games.
Yeah, that's what we're going to have to see. And quite honestly, I think the A's, if they got 21 home runs from him in 162 games, they would probably take it, because I mean, if you project out the numbers that he had last year, he's on pace to hit about 40 home runs, a little over 40 home runs. That's not very realistic. I think about 25 home runs is where I would expect Brandon Moss to be. Now, his backup is another former top prospect who has been just a complete bust at the MLB level, and that's Derek Barton. Barton last year split time at both AAA Sacramento and the MLB Oakland A's, and in his MLB career, he's just never figured it out. He's a career .249 hitter, only has 27 home runs, and this is a guy who's seen full-time action at the MLB since 2008, so it's not like he's just coming up. And he was a guy that once people thought was going to be a stud first baseman. It's never worked out average-wise. He's never really developed the power that I think a lot of people anticipated that he would. And he just looked like, out of the minor leagues, he looked like he was going to be a great all-around hitter, and it's never really happened for Derek Barton. He's still 27, 28 years old, so it's not like he can't figure it out, because Brandon Moss was 28 or 29 last year when he figured it out. But to this point, Derek Barton has been an extreme disappointment. Now, Jemile Weeks, the brother of Ricky Weeks, will be the starter over at second base. Weeks last year in 118 games was disappointing, I would think, to say the least. Hit .221, 2 home runs. I mean, he's never going to be a power guy, stole 16 bases, but Justin, this is a guy who does not... he's on a short leash over at second base in terms of being the starter. He's going to enter the season as a starter, but the A's do have other options, whether it's Scott Sizemore, whether it's Jed Lowry. The A's showed last year that if Jemile Weeks does not produce the way that they need him to, they'll find another option.
Going personal here, Jamal Weeks is my favorite Oakland Athletics player on this roster today. Jamal Weeks is a dangerous player to have on the base path. This guy will get on base. This guy has tremendous speed. This guy has Rajee Davis speed on the base path. This guy can steal you bases. And you know what? Even though last year was a big hiccup season for him, you know what? I do like the way that the Oakland Athletics are going the route of, let's give him one more shot. And if it doesn't really work out, you can also send him down to Sacramento, the AAA affiliate, the River Cats. So, it's not a big, issue there. But, you got some great depth over at the second base. At second base, you got Scott Sizemore, you got Jed Lowry, like I mentioned. So, you know what? If Jamal Weeks does get into a minor of a slump and he needs to build his, progression down to the farm system, it's totally understandable. But, you know what? The Athletics, like I said, they do have the depth around him. But overall, Jamal Weeks, this guy plays great defensive baseball. He has great speed on the base path. It's always good to have. So I like the whole regulation, what they're doing over at the second base for the Oakland Athletics.
I do believe he has a ton of potential, but if you're not going to be a power guy and you're going to rely a lot on base stealing, you need to get on base, and he didn't do that last year, hitting .221. He obviously did not do that. He needs to do a better job of just hitting for contact and getting on base. His backup is going to be Scott Sizemore, a guy who in AAA Toledo, which is the Detroit Tigers AAA, I believe, or it used to be the Tigers AAA. I believe it is now in AAA Toledo last year for the Tigers, he split the season between the Tigers and the A's. He hit .408 with the Tigers AAA team. The A's then picked him up, and at their AAA level, he hit .267. Coming up to the MLB level then, in 93 games, he hit .249 with 11 home runs, 52 RBIs. So I think that this is a guy who's a solid option off the bench. The Tigers once thought he was going to be a very good starter. I don't really see that. And I think Jamal Weeks is still your best overall option if you're this team. But Scott Sizemore gives you a good bat off the bench, which this team has a pretty decent amount of guys that they can bring off the bench. So you like that. He gives you another option at DH. So certainly he's just adding depth, I think, to say the least. Hiroki Nakajima, coming over from Japan, will be the starting shortstop. Nakajima made headlines in the offseason when in his introductory press conference he called Billy Beane, the Oakland A's GM, sexy. I found that a little strange. But Nakajima in 15 games in spring training, which is really all we have to go off of, he hit 162, 0 home runs. So he hasn't done a ton. He's stolen a few bases. Justin, I think we're just going to kind of have to wait and see with Nakajima. He is already 30 years old. So we'll see what type of production he brings over to the MLB.
Yeah, I mean, throughout his spring start, I saw this guy play about 4 or 5 different times because the Oakland Athletics don't live too far from me, so I was able, to catch up a couple of A's games. I seen him play. He has a great swing. He does have he has some power, not a whole lot of power. So it's really interesting that what a lot of people are saying right now, that he goes, oh, this guy's going to be my Rookie of the Year, American League Rookie of the Year. It is spring training, and a lot of players are, they're still developing their swings from the off season and everything, and we're just not seeing the full production what Nakajima has been seeing. So we just hope that he can come into the season. We just see the whole different side of him, and that he plays at the greatest of his abilities. So we'll just have to wait and see. He's 30 years old. He's getting up. He's close. He's getting up there in age. He's 30 years old. That's getting a little bit too kind of old. But Nakajima overall, it's a great acquirement for the team. It's a whole new direction over at shortstop.
Yeah, we'll see what Nakajima does. Again, excuse me. Again, I don't have a ton to go off of with Nakajima. I don't follow Japanese prospects very much. So we'll see what happens with him. Obviously, he has very good talent to be coming over to the MLB. Jed Lowry, another guy who's a former Boston Red Sox prospect. Jed Lowry is going to get a look as a backup shortstop, a backup second baseman, and potentially even a backup third baseman. So Jed Lowry is going to be this team's super utility man. Last year spent the season with the Houston Astros, hit .244 with 16 home runs, 42 RBIs. And again, that's what I'm saying. You have Chris Young on your bench, you have Jed Lowry on your bench, and then you also have Scott Sizemore. You have some guys who would start on other teams, and if they're not starters, at least they're going to give you some power production off this bench. So Jed Lowry is going to be very key because you don't know what you're going to get out of Nakajima, and if you get good production out of Nakajima, you're not sure what you're going to get out of Jamal Weeks over at second base. So I think having Jed Lowry here is a guy who has starting experience in the MLB with both the Red Sox, I should say, and the Houston Astros. throws, never over a full season, but he's gotten some starting experience. So we'll see ultimately what his role is. It could very well end up that Jed Lowry is just a bench piece, but I wouldn't be surprised if he is a starter at some point this season. Josh Donaldson will be the starter over at third. Donaldson in 75 games last year hit .241 with 9 home runs and 4 RBIs. Justin, that's pretty solid production over the course of that season last year. In the minor leagues, he had hit .335 with 13 home runs and 45 RBIs. So this is going to be a guy who's probably going to give you about 13, 14 home runs. If the average can come up, then he's going to be extremely productive for the A's this season.
Oh, absolutely. Josh Donaldson, I should say. You know, this guy is he's really kind of questionable because we just don't really know what to expect out of Josh Donaldson because, you know, he does start the season up at the Major League level with the Oakland Athletics. And we saw as the season progressed, he went down on a slump. His average was declining. He batted .241 in 75 games last year. Then he found his pace down at the Sacramento level. You know, this Oakland A's team last season, you know, they went off they were in the beginning stretch of the season, just declined a little bit, but they were able to get back into groove, and they won the division. So Josh Donaldson, as it goes back to Donaldson, this guy really found his groove at Sacramento, where he batted .335. That's phenomenal. Batted 13, hit 13 home runs and 45 RBIs. So you know what? I think Josh Donaldson for this season, he really needs to work on bringing that minor league .335 and try to get it to the major league level, try to get to .335. Are we going to see it? Probably not. But you know what? This guy does have a lot of potential to bat, you know, .310, maybe .312. But I think his power could go up a little bit. But overall, Josh Donaldson is not a bad option over at third base. I like what he can do. He has a great power. And then you also have a backup if Josh Donaldson is not, you know, producing well. You also got Jed Lowry, who has played shortstop, second base, third base, first base. This guy has played everywhere around the diamond. And, you know, Jed Lowry is going to be a great accusation for this Oakland Athletics team.
Yeah, I think he really is. He's going to be extremely valuable. And a guy last year who was a great pickup for this team was Yoenis Cespedes. It took me about half the year to learn how to even say his name, but it was worth it because I had to continuously say his name because of how productive he was last year. Cespedes came over from Cuba. It was a Cuban import. And the one thing that I think people need to remember about him is he was an import, meaning that he is a few years older than a normal rookie. He's 26, 27 years old, so he's pretty much picking up right in his prime. And last year, he only played 129 games. I have a bit of concern with him staying healthy, but when he was healthy, he was extremely productive. This team had signed Manny Ramirez. They ended up not even needing him because of how productive Cespedes had been. He had .292, 23 home runs, 82 RBIs, stole 16 bases. Justin, to me, if he can stay healthy over the course of a full season, get the average up about 10 points, I think if he stays healthy, you're going to see him hit close to 30 home runs, close to 100 RBIs. Yoenis Cespedes is a legitimate AL MVP candidate.
Oh, I agree, man. Yoenis Cespedes is a monster when he's healthy. We just look at last season, like Tim said, he ran down the stats. And you know what? Those 23 home runs that he hit, 82 RBIs. You know, he missed a huge chunk of the season, about 50-some games. But you know that the health is just a major concern for him right now. And you know what? It's a small, you know, health concern. But you know, when this guy is playing, this guy has great outfield ability. This guy has a badass, you know, power swing. You know, I don't like to cuss the videos, but you know what? You gotta face the facts that Yoenis Cespedes does have that badass power swing. And this guy can be a potential 30 home run hitter. This guy could be the next Jose Bautista. But is he going to hit up there to 40 home runs, 50 home runs a year? I don't think so. I think about 30 home runs to about 27 RBI or 27 home runs a year is going to be up in there in his alley.
Yeah, we'll see what ultimately does happen. I think the sky's the limit really for Cespedes, and you mentioned that power stroke. It is it's up there with, for me, Cliff Floyd and Ken Griffey Jr., some of the nicest home run swings that I've ever seen in my time watching baseball. Coco Crisp is going to be the starter over in center field. Crisp last year hit .259, stole 39 bases, wasn't quite able to steal 40 bases for 2 years in a row, but stole 39 bases, only got caught 4 times, 11 home runs, 46 RBIs. He's been around for quite a while now, about 10 seasons in the MLB, and he's remained a guy that's going to give you about a .260 average, hit you 10 home runs, and steal you a lot of bases, show a good glove in center field. So is he the best center fielder in the game? No, but is he a pretty solid option out there in center? I would say so.
Absolutely, man. Coco Crisp coming over here, he's finally found a solid home in Oakland, being the team's starting center fielder. You cannot go wrong with that. Coco Crisp, what really brings him down a little bit is his disappointing, end of the season type of run. His average goes down a little bit. This is a guy that can bat 270 up there in Alley. But you know what? He batted 259 last year. He is a threat on the base path. 39 stolen bases last year. Really a decline from 2011, where he stole the 49 bases. But out of this, if this Oakland A's team is going to compete against this, whole revamped type of American League division, you really got to get full production out of Coco Crisp. You got to get full production out of, Josh Reddick and everybody in the center field. But I think that Coco Crisp has got to step up a whole lot more. He's got to he has to maintain a solid batting average throughout the entire season. He cannot fall off, in the dog months of August and September.
Yeah, and that's the one concern that you do have. If he were to fall off, they have a very, very good option as your fourth outfielder, who also gives you an option if Cespedes were to get injured. You could see Chris Young, who is the guy I'm referring to. You could see Cespedes, if he were to get injured, he would go to the DL. Then you would see Seth Smith likely transfer out to left field from DH, and then you would see Chris Young become your DH. If not, you have another option in center field. So Chris Young's a guy I like this pickup a lot. He does make a decent amount of money, which is one of the reasons that the Arizona Diamondbacks ultimately did move on from him. But he hit 231 last year. Yeah, that's disappointing. But he's only a few years removed from, in 2001, hitting 27 home runs and 91 RBIs and stealing nearly 30 bases. He's had some problems staying healthy. He did last year for sure, but I think when he is healthy, he's someone that can hit you close to 250, 25 home runs, and 80 RBIs. And to have that option off of your bench, even if it's only for a year until he kind of gets back on his feet in his MLB career, it's scary, and that's one of the reasons why I do believe that the Oakland A's are going to continue to have success this year, is because they have a very good amount of depth coming off of this bench with Jed Lowry, with Scott Sizemore, and with Chris Young. It's scary and it's exciting, really.
Yeah, I like this bench a whole lot. You got Chris Young. Even though, Chris Young, he had a major decline in 2012. He did spend, a couple of games down in the minor league system. He's just trying to get back into a healthy groove. And you know what? Last year, 2012, with the Diamondbacks, there's just so many rumors that he was going to get traded at the deadline. He's going to get traded. But the Diamondbacks, let him stick around for the second half of the season, and they'll just think about their options coming into, the offseason. So they decided to trade him away to the Oakland Athletics, and they got a couple of prospects. They got Cliff Pennington to become the team's starting shortstop over in Arizona. But now he's going to be coming over to Oakland, in which, Tim, you said that, there could be a big possibility that possibly Coco Crisp could get traded. And, I can actually understand that. I think Chris Young is making too much money, like Tim said off camera, that he's making too much money just to sit on the bench. I think Chris Young can get back to a starting form this season and really win the center field starting job over Coco Crisp. But this team really does need another option up in the outfield. I think that Chris Young should be the starting, but they really need to bring in either a couple more prospects or bring in another, just add more depth to their outfield. But you just can't have Chris Young just sit on their bench making the money that he's making and just let him sit there.
I think even if you don't trading Coco Crisp is an option. Another option would be to play Chris Young at DH, because I don't think too many people are going to argue that when Chris Young is healthy and he's hitting right, that he's a better option than Seth Smith. And Seth Smith is a lefty, so at the very least hit Chris Young against left-handed pitchers. I don't know, but I think being a fourth outfielder, Chris Young's just a little too good and a little too expensive to be that. Now, a guy in right field who had a breakout year last year and has one of the nicest beards in the MLB is challenging Brian Wilson, who's technically not even in the MLB right now, and Jason Worth for the nicest beard is Josh Reddick, who in 156 games last year, he really found it. He had been a top prospect of the Red Sox. This team appears to have found some people from the Red Sox that didn't work out there, but appear to be working out pretty well here. And Josh Reddick's just another example that in 156 games last year, he hit 242. That was really the one disappointment. But he stole 11 bases, hit 32 home runs, and 85 RBIs. And he's another one of the guys on this team that I look at him and I say, tremendous season last year. He might be better this year, but there's also the possibility that the pitchers catch up to him and he's disappointing. So that's the one thing in the back of my mind that concerns me about the A's is there's a few guys that they're expecting to play similar to how they did last year. Him and Brandon Moss being the biggest ones that we're just not 110% sure that they're going to be able to duplicate what they did last year.
Now we're talking about Mr. WWE in the Oakland Athletics organization, Josh Reddick. And you know what? Last year, the power was there. You know, the RBIs was there. The average was not. It really disappointing. This is a guy who's not going to give you a solid average. If you looked out through his entire career, you know, this guy batted .242. And in the 80 games with the Red Sox, I don't really count it. He batted .280. I mean, his average was never really there. This is a guy who's going to be coming into this season with high expectations on my part and also on the organization's point, because Josh Reddick last year really surprised us and really came out of nowhere. You know, he came out there and just had a productive power swing, 32 home runs, 85 RBIs. This guy is phenomenal. This guy just really needs to work on getting his average up. This guy can be, you know, a really underestimated, you know, MVP in this league if he just brings his average up. You know, 242. That's not good at all. For a solid outfielder that he is, he just needs that average to come up. You know, I'll take the 32 home runs a year. I'll take the 85 RBIs a year, but I will not take the 242 average.
Yeah, you'd like to see that come up. Ultimately, I'm just not sure that that's who he is. We'll see what happens. I hope he can get that average up. I'm just not necessarily sure it's going to happen. Over to their rotation now, because the lineup looks pretty solid. Let's look at the rotation. Brett Anderson will be the ace of this team. Anderson only made 6 starts last year, and he was 4-2 with a .257 ERA. I'm a little concerned with Brett Anderson being the ace of this team because he's never really had a full season of sustained success. Was he good last year? Yeah, but he only made 6 starts. 2 years ago, he made 13 starts and had a 4 ERA, and in 2010, he made 19 starts and had a .280 ERA, so that's almost a little more than half a season. In 2009, the only time when he ever pitched 30 games, he was 11-11 with a .406 ERA. So I like Brett Anderson as a middle of the rotation guy, and he's still very young, so I think he's going to get better, but I'm not sure if he is ready to be the ace of this team.
Yeah, I mean, this team lost a couple of stars. You know, we don't have Dallas Braden anymore. He's still on the free agent market. I can understand why he's been really injured. But you're going to be going with Brett Anderson. You know, I agree with you, Tim. There is a lot of concern about Brett Anderson. You know, he was 4-2 last year. He was pretty solid, but that's only in 6 starts. This is just that injury concern is what I really have around Brett Anderson. He's really got to step up this year, and you know what, he really has got to maintain that health. He really needs to be 100% throughout this entire year, and you know he's going to have a big bullseye on his chest because you know he's going to be carrying the heaviest workload out of any pitcher in this rotation because this team really needs they need production out of their hitting, and they also need really productive out of Brett Anderson. I think this is a guy that you guys really want to look out for this season if you're the Oakland Athletics and you are concentrated more on their pitching rotation.
And who was the other pitcher that they lost at some with the Diamondbacks? The one who got hit in the head last year. I can't think of his name off the top of my head right now.
Brandon McCarthy.
Yeah, Brandon McCarthy. So they lost Brandon McCarthy as well, and I think that is another big loss. A guy that came over from the Arizona Diamondbacks organization in a trade a couple years ago that scouts have big projections for is Gerard Parker. Parker last year with the A's went 13-8 with a .347 ERA. I think that was an extremely good, impressive rookie season. And for me, I expect the numbers to only get better from this point out for Parker. .347 ERA last year. I think he can get down to like a .320 ERA. And to have a .320 ERA and be under 25 years old early in your career, I think it shows the potential that Gerard Parker does have for the Oakland A's long term. I think he is the ace of this team and one of the pieces this team is going to build around heading into the future.
Absolutely. Jared Parker, a guy who they brought over from the Arizona Diamondbacks, has been phenomenal. The Diamondbacks, when you look at their farm system, they do have great production of building up these young talents. Down at the Vicela, they're single-A advanced league. You also got the Mobile Bay Bears. You know, the farm system for the Diamondbacks has been phenomenal, and Jared Parker has really learned a lot from him. Now coming over to the Oakland Athletics, you know, he jumped right in with the big dogs. Only made 4 starts in 2012 for the Sacramento River Cats before making the jump out to the major league level. You know what? It's understandable that he really did get into this highly good form. I do have a lot of praise for him. This is a potential 15 to 16 win guy, and you know what? This season you could possibly end up seeing 15 to 16 wins from Jared Parker.
Yeah, you certainly could. Tommy Malone is going to be the number 3 guy behind Parker, and Tommy Malone is a guy in the middle of this rotation that I feel pretty comfortable with. A 3.74 ERA last year. He's still pretty young, and I think he can get that ERA down to about 3.60, maybe even 3.55 this year. So if you look around this division and you start to think about a 3.55 ERA, it's not going to be out of the question because the Angels are a great hitting team, but the Rangers lost Josh Hamilton, they lost Michael Young. Who knows what's going on with Nelson Cruz? It's just there's a lot of questions with that team. The Mariners lineup has potential, but nothing's a certainty. The Astros lineup is a joke, to be quite honest with you. So I look around the rest of this rotation. I think with him making 9 or 10 starts just within this division, he's going to benefit from that, and he is a solid number 3 guy. Now looking forward into the playoffs, I think that he would be better suited to be the number 4 starter, and maybe the A's at this trade deadline, if they're competitive like we expect them to be, I think that they maybe will look to add another starter. But heading into the season, Justin, I feel confident with Malone at number 3, A.J. Griffin, who had a tremendous rookie season last year, going 7-1 with a 3.06 ERA. He's just another extremely bright piece this team has at the number 4 starter. And then Dan Straley is going to be your number 5 starter, rounding out this rotation. Straley was extremely successful at all the levels he was at last year. Combined between AA and AAA was 9-7 with a 2.78 ERA. And at the MLB level, he was 2-1 with the 3.89 ERA. So that's the back end of your rotation guy. So I think looking over this rotation, there isn't a legitimate ace, at least at this point. But there's guys in this rotation that project to be legitimate aces, and guys that make you think that long term this is going to be a very good rotation if they hold on to these pieces.
Absolutely. We also are missing one guy out, and that's Bartolo Colon.
Yeah.
This pitcher rotation could be, a kind of, rearranged once Bartolo gets back to the major league level. I think he's actually going to be suspended to start the season, or
I believe he is.
Yeah, it could be moved down a little bit. I think Dan Straley could be sent down to, the AAA River Cats level. So, I think he's just there for the time being until Colon gets back up to the MLB level. But looking at Tommy Malone, A.J. Griffin, and Dan Straley for the time that they have, Straley is going to be the more likely man out. But, he is a great up-and-coming guy in their farm system. So, just give him some more time. And it's understandable. Just give him the shot at number 5, and let's see what he has, above and beyond. Tommy Malone, 13-10 at 3.74 ERA, still up-and-coming guy. The prospects for the Oakland Athletics has been phenomenal. I think Tommy Malone comes out in 2013 will get you about 13 to 14 wins. So, Tommy Malone is going to be a keeper in this pitcher rotation. Looking over at A.J. Griffin, my favorite guy in this pitching rotation, the guys you really want to pay attention to. This guy has a great fastball, a great curveball, a great changeup. He has a 7.3 record last year with a 2.82 ERA. And that's in 17 starts. You do expect the starts to go up a little bit more and have him extend his innings a little bit more. So we just hope for the best right there for A.J. Griffin. But, this is a guy you guys really want to look out for the Oakland Athletics come 2013.
Yeah, and last year we were really criticizing the Gio Gonzalez and Trevor Cahill trades, but if you look around this rotation and even this lineup in a sense, it's littered with players who were once pieces in those trades, and it appears to this point that the A's have won the Trevor Cahill trade. The Gio Gonzalez was a stud last year and is probably going to continue to be one this year, so it's hard to say that they flat out won that trade, but I think in general the A's have made smart trades over the past couple years when they have decided to move on from players. So we're seeing some of those guys come up now and play successful roles in this team. The final 2 guys I'm going to talk about are Ryan Cook and Grant Balfour, the back end of this bullpen for the A's. Ryan Cook will be the setup man. Cook last year was the closer for a while, but blew 7 saves, 14-21. Overall, I think he was best suited as a setup man. Ended up with a 6-2 record and a 2.09 ERA. And then Grant Balfour, who there are some questions about whether he will be ready for the MLB season coming off of a knee surgery. Balfour last year with the A's was 3-2 with a 2.53 ERA, 24 saves and 26 attempts. Grant Balfour played an extremely productive role in shutting games down and getting the A's to the playoffs at the end of the season by saving the final game against the Texas Rangers. So I think that Grant Balfour at the back end of this bullpen, with Ryan Cook setting him up, the A's are set with a pretty solid bullpen.
Oh, I love this bullpen a whole lot. You got my boy Ryan Cook, a guy who I've been following since day one. He was actually, with the Arizona Diamondbacks, a guy who they brought over as well. And, Ryan Cook, this guy is going to be shut out. And, if Grant Balfour is not ready for the start of the season, you cannot go wrong with bringing in Ryan Cook as your closer. Last season, like Tim said, he did blow the 7 saves. But you know what? He has been in the bullpen. He is very comfortable, at being a setup man and being a closer. So you cannot go wrong with adding Ryan Cook in. Now, going over to Grant Balfour, he finally found a home there. He went from Minnesota to Tampa Bay, and it was just off and on with the guy. So coming over to Oakland, I'm like, let's just hope that this could be a long-term situation. I think we actually found a solid in a final home for Grant Balfour. Who's getting up there in age, and he's still producing the way that he is. He's a great closer. The fans love him in Oakland, and it's just a match made in heaven for Oakland, the Oakland fans, in Grant Balfour.
I think this team in general is a match made in heaven for a city that had not had a successful team for quite some time since going. They had a year in 2006 where they went to the ALCS against the Tigers, but after that there was quite a drought. This team just really could not build a successful team, and when they got good players such as Matt Holliday, he wasn't successful there, and they moved on quickly and didn't get great returns. Billy Beane has found it again. He's built a very young, talented team. And Justin, there may be questions with Brandon Moss and Josh Reddick, but I expect those questions to be answered positively this season. I think that the A's are a serious competitor to return to the playoffs. Are they going to beat the Angels in this division? I don't think so. I think the Angels have this division, but the Rangers, to me, are really going to take a step back to probably being about an 86-win team this year. And looking at the Angels, or the A's, I truly believe they're an 89 to 90-win team that will compete for one of those 2 wild card spots, and we could see this team back in the playoffs for the second straight season.
I have them in 3rd place. I think the Rangers, even though they did take a heavy loss, he lost Josh Hamilton, and we'll preview them there down the line. But I still think that the Rangers, with Adrian Beltre, they still have Nelson Cruz, you have Ian Kinsler. I still think that this team can still, squeeze out a couple of big victories at the end of the season. And against Oakland, I think Oakland is gonna go back to the playoffs. But this is a team that could possibly get the wild card. But I still have Texas in 2nd place. And there are a lot of questions I do have for this team. I think Josh Reddick is going to be the prime factor here. Can that average go up this year? Can he still produce like he did last year with the home runs? 32 home runs last year, about 85 RBIs like he did last year. I'll take those, but that average needs to go up. This team, it's going to be a close battle between them and Texas, but you know what? Tim, you have them in 2nd, I have them in 3rd.
Tremendous season last year. We will see if the A's can follow it up in 2013. One place that will be following it up is the Real Sports Talk. Please subscribe because you can check out videos all throughout the MLB season. Justin and I are going to be dishing it out like no one else across the internet. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.